5 spine-chilling true stories revealed this summer, terrifying secrets from haunted places. The moments of quiet before sleep filled the old house were the quiet shattering moments before a storm. Sarah could feel it, a deep, unnatural stillness that clung to the corners of the dimly lit rooms. She stood at the window, her heart racing as shadows danced at the edges of her vision. Just days into their new life, her excitement had already transformed into a cold knot of dread. They were supposed to be safe here. Instead, the door creaked open. A draft sent chills through her, as if someone had been standing there, only to retreat back into the dark, deep breaths. Just the wind, she thought. Her 2 children, Emma and Jake, played in the corner, their laughter drifting into the oppressive atmosphere. But the gleeful sound felt wrong. It echoed, soon drawn to whispers that skittered through the hallway. "Mommy, look! Brandon says he loves this house," Emma exclaimed, eyes bright with innocence. The name sent a shiver down Sarah's spine. "Brandon? Who's Brandon?" she asked, tightening her grip around the coffee mug in her hand. The laughter faded as they exchanged knowing, unspoken glances. Something flickered in those shadows, something lurking in silence. While Sarah tried to brush it off, dread gnawed at her. That night, sleep eluded her. Whispers grew louder, chilling her to the bone. Faint voices liked to tease. "Leave now," they seemed to say, a clawing rush of panic flooding through her. She stumbled to the door, halting as it swung open without a shove. Fear took hold. The house had teeth, gnashing, ready to consume. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let us continue. Each passing day threw new torments at Sarah. Creaking doors opened and closed, a toy would inexplicably start playing in the middle of the night. With summer crawling in like a thick fog, isolation seeped into her heart. Neighbors, once friendly, wore masks beneath those hollow smiles. Their kind offers felt predatory, like wolves circling prey. Yet, one smiled warmly back, Lucy, with a bright exterior that melted Sarah's fears, as she spoke of the house's past. But their connection twisted deeper. Lucy seemed to blend shadows with light, her laughter enchanting yet eerily hollow. Then it hit. Emma's imaginary friend, Brandon, was the boy who vanished decades ago, entangled within dark tales woven into the fabric of the community. Was she instilling terror, inciting conversations born of ancient myth? Sarah felt suffocated by secrets that hid beneath the facade of neighborly hugs. As incidents escalated, her children grew quiet, exchanging fearful glances with her. This house had morphed into a sinister being, fetid breaths hovering over their shared meals. Then, the final straw fell when Lucy's eyes glinted with an unsettling spark while sharing that the neighborhood endured a curse, the kind that echoed pain and betrayal. Panic raced. Suddenly, Sarah wasn't just protecting her children from the house, but from them all. There was no escape in sight, just tightening shadows and growing whispers lurking within, awaiting their moment to strike. Would Sarah finally uncover the dark truth of their home, or would darkness engulf what was left of her family? Only time would tell. The next morning, a suffocating fog wrapped around the house. Hazy sunlight struggled to break through the dense gloom, casting eerie shadows on the walls. "Pack away the curtains," Sarah told herself, yet the very thought sent another wave of dread crashing over her. The air felt charged, pregnant with the unspoken. She watched Emma and Jake at breakfast, their pancakes untouched, eyes wide and fearful. "Are you two okay? You barely touched your food," she said, her voice trembling. They flinched at her words, exchanging secretive glances as they whispered to one another, their voices barely audible. Panic gnawed at Sarah's insides. Was the house suffocating their innocence too? "Mommy, Brandon says we need to play," Emma finally said, her voice eerily calm. The easy way she dropped the name sent ice coursing through Sarah's veins. "What do you mean, Emma? Where is Brandon?" "In the attic. He wants to show us his toys," Emma answered, eyes gleaming with a strange delight. The attic. An ominous chill settled over Sarah at the mention. It was true the house held secrets, and she cursed herself for not exploring every corner the moment they moved in. "Let us not bother with Brandon right now," she replied, forcing a smile that felt like glass shards. "Why don't we go to the park instead?" But Emma's sudden outburst interrupted her thoughts. "Brandon's sad, Mommy. He said he needs us." Jake, his little hands shaking, murmured, "I don't want to go to the attic." Each word crackled with fear. They were scared, too, of what they didn't fully understand. The minutes crawled by. Finally, Sarah made a decision. "Round them up, give them some false sense of security. Okay, we'll go after breakfast. Together." She nodded, but deep down uncertainty clawed at her confidence. After breakfast, Sarah coaxed the kids into wearing their shoes, the morning dragging painfully. Each sound echoed eerily in the quiet house as they moved toward the attic door. As she reached for the rusty doorknob, it felt as though the house murmured its displeasure, the low, grating sound vibrating through her fingertips. When the door creaked open, darkness spilled out like shadows hungering for warmth. Sarah hesitated. Maybe we should wait until later," she stammered, her eyes scanning the darkness. But the children, catching a glimpse of flickering shapes inside the cramped space, pushed past her in eager determination. "Brandon will be waiting," Emma exclaimed, tugging Jake along as laughter erupted, stark in its contrast to the foreboding atmosphere. Fear gripped Sarah as she followed her children into the steep stairwell, the air heavy with dust and unspoken fears. Each step led her deeper into a pit of darkness. As they reached the attic, the chill was tangible. The air thickened, as if the walls were closing in. Broken toys were strewn across the floor, cobwebs draping the corners. It was an eerie playroom abandoned by time, echoes of laughter lingering in the air, ghosts of joy tainted by sorrow. "Brandon?" Emma called, her voice ringing hollow. A moment later, a soft giggle floated back, strange and haunting. Then, Sarah felt it. Eyes watching from the shadows, hot and insistent. The whispers returned. "Come play, stay forever." They clawed at the fraying edges of her sanity. "No, come on, guys, we need to leave," she pleaded, but the children stood still, transfixed. "Brandon wants us to stay," Jake muttered, his voice distant, glazed over. As the words settled in the attic's stale air, dread washed over Sarah like a tide, and she realized the games had only just begun. What had her children invited into their lives? Would she be able to pull them back from the brink before it was too late? A sense of impending doom wrapped around them as the laughter deepened, and shadows surged forward, hungry for their souls. Now, with every corner of the attic filled with darkness, where could they possibly run to escape the lurking terror? The laughter danced in the air, an otherworldly melody that twisted around Sarah's throat, choking her words. She took a step back, the floorboards creaking beneath her weight, a remnant of a time long gone. Emma and Jake stood, mesmerized by the shadows, their eyes reflecting an eerie light that set every motherly instinct on fire. "Guys, we need to go." She gripped their shoulders, panic lacing her voice. The desperate edge sent a ripple of fear through Emma. "But we want to play." Her little face flushed with excitement as if Brandon's presence was the answer to a childhood yearning, a forgotten wish. As her children pulled away, the giggle morphed into a low chuckle that echoed sinisterly in the corners of the attic. The toys seemed to pulse with life, their eyes glinting with malevolent glee. A tattered teddy bear propped against the wall stared lifelessly, yet it felt as though it was waiting, watching. "Brandon?" Sarah called again, her voice trembling, exposing the raw fear gnawing at her heart. "Where are you?" The darkness shifted, undulating like a living thing, the shadows slithering closer. Suddenly, Jake screamed, his little voice piercing the heavy silence. Mommy. The door. It's gone. Sarah turned, her breath caught in her throat. The door they had entered through was no longer visible, just a wall of thick shadow, consuming all light. The attic had transformed, and they were no longer merely in a room but trapped inside its twisted grip. Cold sweat broke out on her forehead as she fought the urge to collapse. We have to stick together. We can find a way out. She pulled the kids to her side, but the shadows whispered softly, luring them deeper into the darkness. Sarah, a voice, familiar yet twisted, danced between her ears. It sounded like Brandon, but distorted, layered with an unsettling echo. Stay and play forever. No. Sarah shouted, her voice trembling with defiance. Who are you? The disembodied voice chuckled, soft and chilling. Brandon is just a friend. A friend who needs you, who wants to play. The laughter began anew, swirling around them, each sound cutting through the thick, heavy air. She tried to drag Emma and Jake towards a corner of the attic where faint light flickered like a dying breath. But the shadows coiled around their feet, sticky and oppressive, pulling them back. Just a game, Emma hummed, her voice ringing sweetly. It sent a shudder up Sarah's spine. The innocence had evaporated, her daughter's gaze was vacant, remote. Emma! Snap out of it! Sarah's voice broke, despair wrestling with desperation. She grabbed both kids by the arms, shaking them gently. This isn't real. We have to escape. The shadows shifted again, towering over them, dark tendrils curling like smoke. They felt alive, hungry, and an overwhelming force pulled at Sarah, threatening to swallow her whole. Stay, they breathed, a chorus of enchanted whispers growing louder and more insistent. Suddenly, an agonizing scream erupted from Jake. Mommy! It's too dark. I can't see. He was trembling, stillness breaking in panic. Sarah's heart raced, the room spinning around her as she pulled him closer. Listen to me. We have to fight. Fight against the dark. Desperation gave her voice wings. Uncertainty flooded her. Could she save them in time? But the shadows roared back, their laughter piercing through the clamor of her thoughts. They enveloped Emma and Jake, gripping them with an icy touch. Join us, lovely children. Play forever. The terrified look in their eyes ignited a rage in Sarah, fueled by the primal urge to protect. Was she too late to save them? Just as she felt the first sliver of despair sink its teeth into her, a sudden flash of light illuminated the attic. For a brief moment, the shadows shrank back, revealing the glint of a silver object wedged among the clutter. A knife, a glimmer of hope forged from fear. Grab it, Sarah. She urged herself, the knife glistening like salvation. But the children stood entranced as shadows pulled them deeper into darkness. In that split second, she realized what would be unleashed next could consume them all. What was waiting in that forbidden darkness? Would the children be able to resist the pull of their new friend? Sarah's hand trembled as she reached for the knife, feeling the weight of choices that could seal their fates. Her fingers brushed the cool steel, and a jolt of adrenaline surged through Sarah. Gripping the knife, she felt its promise of defense against the creeping shadows. But there wasn't time to think. Her children were slipping away. Emma! Jake! She shouted, her voice vibrating against the walls, begging them to see her, to hear her. The shadows writhed around them, hissing, pulling at her children like tendrils of darkness determined to steal their light. A flicker of awareness sparked in Emma's eyes, but it faded quickly. Mommy, she whispered, voice dripping with longing. We want to play. No! Sarah roared, desperation ripping through her as she lunged toward them, knife clutched tight. You have to listen to me. But the shadows thickened, wrapping around Emma and Jake like storm clouds closing in on a sunny day. Their forms shimmered, twisting into shapes that were more puppet than child, and creeping fear took root in Sarah's chest. The attic's atmosphere turned heavy, oppressive. She could feel the weight of the darkness tug at her thoughts, whispering sweet, malicious promises. They'll be happy forever happy no. This isn't happiness. The cry broke from her throat, raw and fierce. This is a trap. The knife felt lighter, the blunt edge of terror lifting as she ignited a flicker of fighting spirit. She lunged toward her children, willing herself to cross the threshold where light met darkness. With every step, shadows twisted and clawed at her ankles, dragging her down. The walls closed in, luminous eyes all around her watching, waiting, echoing sinister laughter. "Brandon wants you, Sarah," the voice purred, sweet and sickly. "Embrace the fun. Join us." She shook her head violently. Fear gripped her. But beneath it, a flicker of hope ignited. "I will not join you. Get away from my kids." The knife glinted in the waning light, the fight illuminating her resolve as she brandished the silver blade like a barrier against the darkness. The echoes of laughter faltered, shadows flinching. Was it working? "Play," Emma whimpered. Sarah felt her heart break as she saw the trickle of innocence washing away from her daughter's gaze. She would fight tooth and nail. Not their innocence, not today. "Hold on to me," she shouted. "We're leaving, now." With all she had, she surged forward, slicing through the darkness, flanking her children like monstrous flowers sprouting from soil unholy. A blinding light emanated from the knife, glowing brighter with each swing she took. But then, a chilling coldness seeped in, seizing her arms, and a thick shadow rose before her, a figure crafted from the deepest nightmares. It wore a playful grin, yet its eyes were hollow pits of despair that seemed to swallow hope whole. "Leave now? But the fun is just beginning." The voice echoed into infinity, the sibilant whispers flooding Sarah's mind with doubt. "What if you lose them forever? I want tea." She screamed, feeling the heat of determination surge through her veins. The shadows coiled tighter around her, whispering desolate promises, their laughter now a cacophony of lost dreams. Panic clawed at her throat as she struck out again, a desperate slash aimed not just at escaping but at shattering the very grip of that eerie spell, but with every slice, the laughter morphed into shrieks, echoes of agony reverberating against the wooden beams. The attic seemed to tremble around them, alive with rage. And then, silence, the darkness stilled, almost as if it were holding its breath. Sarah's heart raced, caught between dread and the unexpected calm. She could feel Emma and Jake's warmth near her, both children suddenly alert, their eyes clear and wide. "Mommy?" Jake asked, confusion cracking through the silence. But just as her hope began to wrestle free of despair, the shadows swelled again. "The game isn't finished. You'll never escape." Panic rocketed through Sarah as she tightened her grip on the knife. The shadows began to slither, reshaping into something monstrous. With one last breath, she turned towards her children, her heart heavy with the weight of the battle. "Ahead. Stay close. No matter what, we fight." But as the monstrous form loomed closer, she couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. Something far worse lurked in the depths of this darkened attic. What would she have to sacrifice to save them? The shadows beckoned, and the line between ally and enemy blurred as fear twisted under her skin. Would the knife protect her, or would it seal their fate? The shadows surged with a life of their own, curling and twisting, morphing into grotesque figures that taunted Sarah. A cacophony of whispers rose around her, echoing her worst fears. "You can't fight us, give in, join our play no." She yelled, the word tearing from her throat. The knife felt like an extension of her fury, a torch against the dark. Yet, with every inch she advanced, it was as if the shadows gained strength, thickening and pulling harder at her resolve. "Mommy." Emma's voice sliced through the chaos, fragile, like glass. It echoed with desperation. "We want to play, please." Sarah swiveled around, a surge of dread washing over her. Those weren't her precious children anymore. The innocence completely lost. They were fading within the swirling mists of the darkness, locked into the pleasure of the shadows. The sight twisted her stomach, urging her to act. Stay. I'm coming. She sprinted forward. Each step felt like wading through molasses. The knife gleamed, reflecting the fading light, but each volley of shadows gripped her tighter, dragging her down. Cold fingers brushed her knuckles, sending a chill deep into her bones. The airy laughter twisted again, now angry, the echoes flaring with malice. Join us, Sarah. The fun always ends in delight. No. You don't want my joy. She swiped at the shadows, wildly, slicing through one tendril only to find its place filled by a multitude more. The darkness was insatiable. Mommy, look! Jake shouted as a burst of brilliance snaked through the dark, illuminating a corner of the room. It flickered, revealing an ancient trunk draped in cobwebs, overshadowed by the chaos surrounding them. Its lid seemed to beckon with an idea on the edge of her mind. Jake! Emma! She pointed, trying to guide them through the dark maze. Help me get to the trunk. We can break this bind. But the shadows coiled, relentless in their pursuit. You'll never reach it. Play with us instead. The siren-like call wrapped around Sarah, thick and suffocating. She could feel the suffusion of despair trying to drown her spirit. Fight! Fight back! She shouted, snapping her eyes to her children, desperate to will them into action. Do you trust me? In a moment that stretched like a rubber band, Jake and Emma nodded, tentative but hopeful. Their connection reignited a fire within Sarah. With her children beside her, they surged toward the trunk, the shadows crying out in frustration. Take my hand! She yelled, and as her children grasped her fingers, a bright spark illuminated the space around them. It shimmered, a barrier between them and the shadows that lashed out like wrathful vipers. Breathing deeply, Sarah swung the knife toward the trunk's hinges and struck the wood, splinters scattering like shrapnel. Shocking energy pulsed through her, and the laughter morphed into frantic howls. Stop! You don't know what you're doing. The monstrous figure recoiled, its eyes narrowing, the playful grin melting away like wax in the heat of a flame. I know a trap when I see it. Sarah screamed, her heart pounding furiously against her ribs. Each hit made the trunk glow brighter, the air rang with a vibrating hum, the shadows began to unravel, retreating from the light, their haunting giggles turning into desperate wails. But an ominous cloud loomed in the background. Something worse lurked just beyond the pale brightness, an ancient evil, waiting for the right moment to strike again. As the trunk finally gave way with a final splintering crack, a sickening chill filled the attic. Stale air whooshed forth, carrying the scent of long-forgotten despair, and the atmosphere shifted, but Sarah would not cease. She met Emma and Jake's eyes, a fierce determination buried deep. Whatever happens next, we face it together. Standing before the open trunk, the darkness recoiling, she could feel an ancient, powerful energy surge towards them. But was it salvation or the beginning of a new nightmare? The laughter of unseen entities echoed once more, chilling them to their cores, whispering secrets and revealing hunger. The game had only shifted gears. What choice lay ahead? Would darker truths emerge as they probed deeper? Or would they unearth a power that could forever shift the balance between light and dark? As the trunk creaked and rattled, something stirred inside. The air turned heavy, thick with a tension that clawed at the edges of Sarah's mind. She felt the shadows retreat like an ebbing tide, yet the low whispers returned, circling her thoughts, sowing doubt like seeds in the fertile darkness. Mommy, what's in there? Emma asked, eyes wide and glimmering with fear, yet laced with curiosity. The sickly scent of old wood and decay enveloped them, pulling at her instincts. A faint glow pulsated from the trunk, bright yet unsettling. I don't know, but we need to find out, Sarah whispered, her voice trembling as she reached forward, cautious yet compelled. The knife rested heavy in her other hand, its cold weight reminding her of the danger they faced. Jake tugged at her sleeve. Maybe it's a way to win escape. His optimism battled with horror. A trickle of sweat dripped down Sarah's back, the battle within her raging. The whispers grew louder. There are secrets to be unveiled, come closer, just a little closer. They thrummed deep within her skull, demanding attention, eager to drown out every rational thought. Look! Emma pointed, her little finger quivering. It's moving. The trunk shivered, its edges vibrating. Then, with a sudden jolt, the lid flew open. A gust of cold wind burst forth, sweeping the attic, and with it came a cloud of dust that hung in the air like tiny stars caught in a net. What is happening? Sarah gasped as she shielded her children from the blast. The energy radiating from the trunk felt alive, crackling with anticipation. Shadows swirled and twisted, attempting to regain their ground, screaming in protest. Through the swirling mist, a figure formed. It was an apparition, with hollow eyes and a mouth painted wide in a grotesque grin. "Welcome to the game," it cawed, voice like rusted metal scraping against bone. "You may unearth the truth, or uncover your darkest fears." "No!" Sarah shouted, instinctively raising her knife, but the shadows surged forward, dark tendrils twisting around her wrist, immobilizing her. Emma and Jake cried out, their faces pale and quivering with terror. "Embrace it, dear Sarah," the spectre wheezed, its ethereal smile growing wider. "Every family has secrets. Yours is no different. What lies hidden in that trunk can either bind you to the depths, or free you from this game." Terror pooled in Sarah's stomach, roiling like a storm. "We want to play, not if it means losing my children." "No choice is innocent, only consequences," it hissed, licking the air with a shadowy tongue. The laughter around them pulsed, insistent and sinister. Just as Sarah felt herself slipping, as if she were about to drown in the darkness wrapping tightly around her, her mind cleared for a fleeting moment. In that moment, she remembered the stories her grandmother told, tales of binding. "Jake! Emma!" she screamed, adrenaline surging. "We can bind it. Just like the stories. We want to keep our family safe. Together." They shouted, the shadows narrowing around them, furious at this unity. A warmth flooded through Sarah as she gathered her children, their hands clasped around the knife, unified against the oppressive dark. "Do you believe?" Sarah shouted, her voice cutting through the din like a beacon. "Do you trust me?" "Yes. We trust you." They echoed, voices steadying her resolve. The spectre's laughter turned shrill, vibrating through her bones. "You think you can bind what has always been." But before it could finish, Sarah shouted again, "Bind the truth." The knife flickered with their collective energy, glowing fiercely as they aimed it at the trunk. Brighter than before, the force lit up the darkness, fracturing the figure's laughter, splitting it apart. The shadows screamed in rage, twisting and writhing. But Sarah realized they could face unearthly horrors, yet behind every dark corner lay something more treacherous. Was it truly their deepest secrets waiting for them? Or something even more sinister that thrived in the heart of their very own history? The room shuddered, the ground vibrating beneath their feet. The shadows were rising again, clawing for re-entry. What new dangers lurked in this old trunk? As the spectre began to dissolve, its laugh echoing in a taunting farewell, Sarah steeled herself for what lay beyond. She had broken the threshold, but what awaited them in the shadows of their past loomed larger than she could imagine. With a chilling breath, she turned to face the trunk once more, heart hammering. The real game had only just begun. What terrible secrets were about to be revealed? Would they bind the old demons or unleash something far worse? The room fell utterly silent, save for the distant, echoing laughter of the spectre as it faded into nothingness. The shadows began to melt away, but their menacing whispers hung thick in the air, a dark promise that the worst was yet to come. Sarah's grip tightened on the knife, her heart racing as an icy breath swept through the attic. "What now?" she mumbled, breathing heavily. Emma clutched her mother's leg, and Jake shivered beside them, wide-eyed and full of uncertainty. The trunk lay open, its contents still hidden beneath swirling dust. We need to see what's inside. Her voice trembled, fear hanging heavily in her throat. She took a small step forward, the floor creaking ominously beneath her feet, the air around them crackled, alive with a sense of foreboding. The faint glow pulsed again, beckoning to them like a siren-esque call. Shadows writhed at the periphery of Sarah's vision. Together, she whispered. We can handle this. With hands shaking involuntarily, she leaned closer. The trunk held so much power, the kind that twisted the very fabric of reality. Her children's breaths echoed in her ears, their terror amplifying the weight of the moment. If we're going in, do it quick, Jake prompted, anxiety creeping into his voice. Taking a deep, stealing breath, Sarah bent low and peered inside the trunk. What lay within caused her breath to hitch. It wasn't just dark, it was an abyss, a gaping maw of nothing that enveloped her senses. But glimmers of light danced in the distance like dying stars, fragments of jagged glass, old photographs, and crumpled letters, each one immersed in shadows. Mommy, it's creeping me out. Emma whined, fingers digging into her mother's skirt. I know, sweetie, Sarah said gently, though terror gripped her heart. We've got to find a way to break this, to end it. Just then, a cold gust swept through the attic, violently shaking the trunk and every loose object around them. A harmonized, staggering symphony of whispers rushed in, each tone distinct yet bound together in a chorus of dread. Free us, they chanted. Sarah! Jake yelled, what do we do? They want us to set them free. No, Sarah breathed, horror washing over her. No, we don't want to free them. We need to find a way to bind them again. But even as she spoke, the shadows crept closer, slithering along the wooden beams as if in understanding. They curled around Sarah's legs, like cold fingers tugging at her heels. With a sudden surge of adrenaline, she lunged for the photographs. They felt familiar faces peering back at her, twisted in sorrow. She recognized her grandmother, eyes heavy with grief. The letters, they told tales of agony, betrayal, and curses long forgotten. Take them, Emma. Take the letters. Sarah exclaimed. She grabbed the closest photograph and hurled it into the trunk, hoping for some reaction. The shadows roiled and lashed out, a furious gale swirling around them. The trunk trembled, pulsating in response. You think you can contain us? The shadows screamed, their collective anger palpable, reaching out as tendrils to ensnare her. Quickly! Sarah urged, shoving more letters into Emma's trembling hands. We have to bind them. We're strong together. Heart racing, she turned to Jake. Bring the knife. We need it. But where was he? Looking around frantically, she felt a pang of panic wash over her. Jake? Right here. He shouted, voice strained. He was trying to push back the shadows, battling what seemed like an invisible force trying to drag him into the trunk. Sarah lunged forward, determination flooding her veins. Hold on, we're getting you out. Do you believe? Yes. Jake cried, straining against the grip of the shadows. But what happens if we bind them? Emma asked, wide-eyed, trembling with fear and uncertainty. We'll face whatever comes, we have to. Sarah insisted, their lives hanging in balance. The shadows merged into a single dark mass, swirling dangerously, and with a primal scream, Sarah rallied her children. Let us do this. Just as they were about to cast the remaining letters into the trunk, the house rattled violently. The lights flickered, and for a breathless moment, everything seemed suspended in time. What's coming? With hearts pounding, they knew, whatever emerged next from that cursed trunk would shatter everything they believed. What terror would they unbind? What dark history awaited them? The shadows thickened, swirling like a storm, and Sarah felt a cold sweat trickle down her spine. The moment stretched, laden with a dreadful anticipation. She blinked fiercely, trying to shake off a choking sense of despair that threatened to swallow her whole. We have to hurry, she whispered, her voice barely breaking through the chaotic whispers trying to drown her. Emma's grip tightened around the letters, the crumpled papers slipping in her small hands. Sarah reached out, brushing the dark strands from her daughter's face. "Hold on tight," she urged, though her own heart was breaking, each desperate thump echoing a warning. "Now, Jake," she shouted, "get the knife." The blade glimmered in the dim light, but he was all too far away, still wrestling with the ominous tendrils of shadow. They danced hungrily, contracting around his arms and shoulders. Each second felt like an eternity. "I can't," Jake gasped, the shadows pulling him closer, his wide eyes reflecting sheer terror. Glimpses of sorrowful faces flickered behind him, crying out in torment. Blood rushed in Sarah's ears as panic surged. There was no room for failure now. "Jake!" she yelled again, desperation igniting a fire in her gut. She couldn't lose him, not like this. Not to this dark curse that had haunted their family for generations. Gathering all her strength, she lunged towards him, reaching past the shadows that clawed at her skin. She felt the chill seep through her clothes, wrapping around her like a vice. "You're stronger than them," she pressed, her voice fierce. "Fight it." With grit and determination, Jake nodded, shaking off doubt. "I can do this," he asserted, pulling himself up with a surge of will. Just then, Sarah felt a rush of warmth as her hand found the knife amid the scattering shadows. "Good. Bring it here," she called. But at that moment, darkness swamped the attic, and the trunk quaked violently, sending tremors through the floor. "Free us! Free us!" The whispers crescendoed into a maddening roar, wrapping around their minds with an intoxicating promise of release. The air thickened as shadows pulsated with a life of their own, coiling tighter and tighter. They felt as if they were watching through a fogged glass, as if the world outside this cursed place was fading into nothingness, leaving only them and the menacing pull of desperation. I don't know how to do it," Jake cried, looking lost, scrambling for his footing. "What if we won't survive this? Just trust me," Sarah shouted, desperate strength tracing her words. "We're family. We can't abandon each other. Bind them together. Uplift your hands. They need to see us." Through the roiling dark mass, she raised the knife high, tracing an arc in the murky air. "Let us claim this power. You cannot bind us." The shadows screeched, their rage intensifying, a tempest of fury. Jake clasped the knife tightly in his palm. "Mom! I'm scared." A lightning bolt of clarity shot through Sarah. "We're scared together. That's what makes us strong." In that moment, the trunk erupted with an ember-like glow, a harsh light battling the darkness pooling around them. The shadows hissed, recoiling as if they feared the illumination, but it only fanned the flames of their impending destruction. "Do it now!" Sarah roared, a primal scream escaping her lips, feeling the words ignite the air. Jake and Emma joined her, their breaths mingling in a frenzy of united energy. Together they hurled every letter and photograph into the abyss, chanting words of binding that echoed through time, a desperate plea to end an ancient curse. As the last letter slipped past their fingers, the trunk roared back, darkness rippling, a tidal wave of shadows crashing over them. The three felt the sinister grip release for an instant, but then came a shattering scream of vindictive wail filled with rage and despair. "No! You will pay for this! You cannot escape!" What erupted next broke the thresholds of their sanity. Blinding light exploded outward, forcing them to shield their eyes, clawing at the darkness that pressed upon them. Sarah's heart thrummed a warning. Something lurking just outside their grasp, something they'd awoken. "What have we done?" Outside, thunder rumbled as the skies grew dark. The house trembled, and they knew, whatever had emerged from the trunk would come for them seeking revenge. The glowing light dimmed, and then silence stretched like a taut wire. But then, through the suffocating dark, a figure materialized, broken and twisted, its hollow eyes fixing on Sarah with a knowing hunger. what terror had they truly awakened? What price would they pay for their attempt to bind the darkness? The air froze, heavy with a suffocating dread, as the figure stepped forward, dragging the shadows with it. Sarah's heart raced, each pulse a drum of panic in her ears. It was the thing they had unwittingly summoned, a darkness that had trickled through generations, now standing before them, alive, ancient, and filled with spite. Emma gasped, clutching the letters closer, the crumpled paper a pitiful shield against the reality twisting before them. Jake stood next to her, his grip still tight on the knife, but the steel looked insignificant against the nightmare they now faced. What is that?" he stammered, struggling to hold on to his courage. The figure took shape, its mouth opening wide, revealing a gaping maw lined with jagged teeth that promised pain and horror. "You have awakened me," it croaked, voice reverberating like a storm through the attic. Shadows lashed out, creeping across the floor, seeking the warmth of their bodies, eager for capture. "You sought to bind us, but the bond is only stronger now. Get back!" Sarah yelled, using every ounce of protective instinct swelling in her chest. She stepped forward, knife raised, defiance surging. "We're not afraid of you." A laugh bubbled from the creature's throat, gravelly and unnatural. "Fear breathes in your bones. You think courage is a shield? It is but a shimmer against eternity." With a sudden burst, the shadows lunged, encircling Emma, yanking her to the floor. "Mom!" she screamed, terror ripping through the air. Sarah lunged at the black tendrils, but they were like iron chains, burning against her skin, threatening to consume her child whole. "Hold on, Em. Fight!" she shouted, desperation clawing at her throat. But shadows pooled around her daughter, the whispers rising once more, an intricate melody of despair and anguish. "Join us, little one, be free of this mortal pain." "No!" Jake roared, charging forward in defiance, brandishing the knife. "Let her go." He swung blindly, the blade glinting against the flickering light. The shadows recoiled at the sight of the glimmering steel, a momentary hesitation that brought hope, a tiny flicker in the engulfing dark. "Quick!" Sarah cried as she joined him, her voice straining against the deafening sounds. "We need to cut the connection. Jake, aim for the trunk." He nodded, realizing what needed to be done. With renewed determination, he took a step back, steadying his hand, aiming for the heart of the horrors they unearthed. "If we don't stop this now," he muttered, eyes wide with clarity. A swell of dark energy surged back, and the creature's grin twisted into a grimace of rage. "Foolish children. You'll regret invoking my wrath. I will take what belongs to me." Suddenly, the shadows shifted, splitting into multiple tendrils, heading straight for them. Sarah, heart pounding, cried out, "Emma, don't give in. Fight!" But the tendrils were relentless, drawing close, darker than midnight, wrapping around the little girl like a sinister embrace. The whispers filled the air, the very fabric of their reality thickening, threatening to trap them in this cursed space forever. Just then, a crack of light blazed from the trunk again, offering a fleeting moment of hope. "Now, Jake!" Sarah urged, adrenaline fueling her determination. "Do it now." Jake gritted his teeth, lifting the knife high, and thrusting it forward with all his might, aiming at the connection tying the shadows to Emma. "Together!" Sarah rasped, adrenaline coursing as they plunged into the chaos, an act of rebellion against despair. The blade struck deep, and for a moment, everything went still. As the echoes of their battle reached a fever pitch, the walls of the attic cried out, shaking violently. Shadows flared and twisted, the tendrils drawing back, howling with fury. Then, in an instant, a cacophony erupted, screeching laughter and dreadful screams colliding with the shattering breath of their fragile victory. "What if it comes back?" Emma quivered, eyes pleading. "Then we'll be ready," Sarah replied through clenched teeth, though a slice of doubt pierced the edge of her resolve. Suddenly, a black gust rippled through the attic, carrying whispers that chilled their very souls. You cannot escape your fate. We will be waiting. The light flickered violently, then extinguished, leaving them in an oppressive darkness. Outside, thunder clapped like the cracking of doom, sending a shudder down Sarah's spine. They had only escaped this time, but the figure lingered in their minds, a persistent nightmare waiting to unfold. Was that just the beginning? Jake whispered, and the question hung heavily in the air, as a deep, ominous crack echoed through the walls. What other horrors foraged in the shadows, waiting for their moment of reckoning? The attic was still, but it felt charged, like the calm before an inevitable storm. Sarah, Jake, and Emma stood huddled close, their hearts racing in unison, breaths shallow. The silence was oppressive, wrapping around them like a tight cocoon, leaving them with only the echoes of whispered threats in their minds. What if it comes back? Jake's voice shook as he clutched the knife, its cool metal almost comforting against the pulse of fear in his chest. It won't, Sarah replied, though uncertainty gnawed at her insides. We've broken its hold. We just need to bind the darkness, the shadows that remain. She glanced towards the trunk, now gaping wide, its insides swirling with remnants of shadows, whispers beckoning with a lure she hoped they could resist. The trunk, Emma said suddenly, eyes brightening as she stepped forward. We can put everything inside. All the letters, the photographs, the history. We can seal it. Yes. Sarah exclaimed, a renewed vigor coursing through her. Together. She turned to Jake, her heart surging with pride. He was brave. They all were. They formed a bond unbreakable by shadows. Rushing to the trunk, they gathered the scattered remnants of their family's past, letters that spilled secrets long hidden, photos of ancestors who had fought their own battles against despair. Each item they tossed in felt like closing a chapter, shielding themselves from the darkness that had seeped into their lives. Tendrils of shadow rose, swirling around them, desperate to reclaim what they had lost, but Sarah stood firm, holding the knife tightly as she felt her children moving alongside her. We're stronger than you. She shouted, anger fueled by the love she bore for her kids. We're not afraid of you. But the shadows recoiled, gathering with renewed fury, almost as if they understood the power of their unity. Sarah's hands trembled as she hurled another photo into the trunk. The shadows screeched, weaving themselves tightly around her feet. She lifted the knife to slash at them, but Jake caught her arm, eyes shining with determination. Mom, we need to keep everything in the trunk for good. Right. She took a deep breath, channeling all her strength. Finish it. We can do this together. She tossed the last of the letters inside, and they felt the electric crackle of binding magic weave through the air, each word spoken as they came together to form their final plea. From our family to the shadows, we bind you to the past. You will not haunt us anymore. We refuse to play. With that, they slammed the trunk shut, their voices blending into an anthem of defiance against the darkness. The knife gleamed ominously, glowing as they placed it atop the trunk, the final testament of their shared strength. A deafening silence fell, and then a thunderous roar erupted from the depths of the trunk like an angry beast. The house shook violently, the walls rattling as shadows writhed and howled, but their unity stood firm, unyielding in the face of the tempest. A flash erupted from the trunk, filling the attic with brilliant white light that swallowed the darkness whole. They shielded their eyes, but the warmth spread through them like sunlight, erasing the remnants of fear. With a final, agonized shriek, the shadows dissipated, drawn back into the depths of the trunk, leaving them in a halo of light. And as the bright energy receded, they felt an immense weight lift from them, the heaviness of fear and dread evaporating like mist in the morning sun. Did we do it? Emma whispered, glancing up at her mother, uncertainty painted on her small features. We did, Sarah breathed, pulling her children into her arms, tears streaming down her cheeks, not from fear this time, but from the relief of survival. We fought for each other. We broke the curse. Jake hugged them tight, laughing through his tears. We're safe now, right? For now, Sarah replied, a wisp of concern threading through her heart. But we'll always be ready. They backed away from the trunk, still glowing softly, a reminder of the battle they had faced together. The silence returned, yet it felt different, lighter, almost peaceful. As they left the attic, Sarah glanced back, resolution coursing through her. They may have sealed the darkness away, but she knew that shadows had a way of lurking, waiting for cracks in their armor. "Promise me," she said, her voice steady as she looked at her children, "we'll always face the darkness together. No matter what." "I promise," Jake said. "Me too," Emma echoed, her eyes shining with the warmth of their shared strength. With those promises, they stepped out into the sunlight, a new beginning waiting just beyond the door, and so, life moved on in their little house, whispers of the past fading like echoes, but Sarah kept an eye on the attic door, knowing that vigilance would always be necessary. As long as they stayed united, no shadow could threaten them again. For their love was the strongest light of all, a beacon against any darkness that dared cross their path. Now, if you enjoyed this intense journey and want to dive deeper into more spine-tingling stories that reveal the power of unity and light over darkness, you need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support and keep up with our exclusive tales. Smash that like button now to help us beat the algorithm and spread awareness about these real-life horrors. And I'm urging you to flood the comments section with your thoughts, theories, and reactions to this ending. We thrive on your input. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to hear this conclusion, because the more we share, the stronger we become.